morning. Today's schedule is Beraishis, learning Beraishis, not as the Parshas HaShavua, which it's not. We're in Parshas Noah. And then we're going to go to some writings of Rav Kook. Last week we began Parshas Beraishis by looking at the Hakdama of the Ramban, Nachmanides, to his explanation on the Torah, which is not just an introduction of the Ramban to his Pirush on the Torah. In fact, it's an explanation and an introduction to how to learn Chumash. And we were in the middle of the Ramban. The Ramban asked a question about why doesn't the Torah begin with Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lema, Beraishis Bara Elokim. Before Beraishis Bara Elokim, we should have the phrase, the sentence, Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lema. God spoke to Moshe and said to him, what did he say? Beraishis Bara Elokim. That's one question the Ramban dealt with last week. The other question the Ramban dealt with last week is what does the phrase Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lema really mean? When we look at the books of the Nevi'im, for example, Yirmiyah, Yecheskel, it says, Vayihi Devar Hashem Elai Lemor, and God spoke to me and said. The Torah, Chamisha Chumshei Torah, God speaking to Moshe. So the psukim should begin with the phrase Vayidaber Hashem Elai Lemor. The way the pasuk is written, it sounds like we're talking about three different, two people and God. God spoke to Moshe, and some third person is telling us what happened. What happened was Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lema. God spoke to Moshe and said. If God's speaking directly to Moshe and Moshe's writing this down, it should use the phrase as used in the Nevi'im, Vayidaber Hashem Elai Lema. God spoke to me and said. It uses the third person, Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lema, until we get to Dvorim, and in some places Moshe is talking in first person. But from Beraishis, although the Beraishis until Moshe's birth in Parsha Shemos, we don't hear Moshe's name, but he's the one that wrote down this Torah. So question one is, why doesn't the whole Torah start? Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lema, Beraishis Bara Elokim. And the second question is, once Moshe is born and God is speaking with him, and Moshe is actually going to write down that which God said directly to him, it should say, Vayidaber Hashem Elai Lema. God spoke to me, which is how the other Nevi'im wrote their books. Instead, Moshe speaks in third person, Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lema. So those are two questions that were raised last week by the Ramban, and he answered those questions. We sent out the Ramban last week. It was a scan that went out, so we're going to continue in the Ramban. We're in the Ramban's second column. The Ramban that you have looks like this. This is the first page of the Ramban, and this is the second page. The first page of the Ramban begins about a third of the way down the page, and then there's a full page of Ramban. We are still on the first page of the Ramban, and we are in this column. We're in the left side column of the first page. Now we're in that first paragraph. One, two, three, 4, 5. 6 lines from the top. It's in the middle of a sentence, but this is where we can begin. Hodi'enu tchila. First, God tells us, Inyan Brias Hashemayim va'aretz v'chol tzivom, about the creation of heaven and earth and all that went along with them, all of creation. Koloma Brias kol nivra elyonim v'tachtonim, the creation of everything above and everything below. Imkein kol hanema b'navua b'maisa merkava. Maisa merkava is Perek Aleph in Yecheskel, the Haftorah for Shavuos, where Yecheskel says, the heavens opened up and I saw the Merkava, I saw the chariot. Of course, this we're told that we're not allowed to learn Maisa Merkava. The Gemara discusses this in Chagiga. Maisa Merkava is only there to be learned by very, very few, select few of people. And Moshe Rabbeinu knew the Maisa Merkava. It's not that Yecheskel came along and he was the first person to describe the Merkava. Moshe Rabbeinu knew the Merkava. That's what the Ramban is going to talk about now. Umaisa Beraishis. Moshe Rabbeinu understood the full complexity at a human level. The most that a human being can understand about Maisa Beraishis, Moshe understood. His teacher was Hashem. V'amakub b'hem l'chachomim told us im Abba hakocha shebetachtonim, and he was taught, Moshe Rabbeinu, the four basic elements of the world. Koach hamachtzavim. We call this domain someach chai medaber. Domain, these are the four elements that make up the basic component parts that we talk about. Machtzavim, stone, inanimate objects. Tzemach, plants, flowers, grass, trees. Nefesh hatanua, animals who can then, they're a step above the plant world, because they're able to move. The kar hatanua is a very important concept. It's a whole new type of bria that can move. It's called the kar hatanua, which we call it nefesh. We call it the domain tzomech chai. It's living, and it's living because it can move from one place to another. The sort of the world below that, the plant world, vegetation, it grows, but it doesn't move. And the fourth level is the medaber. So the four levels are domain, inanimate, someach, it is live, it's a plant, grass, tree, but it can't move. The chai, the living thing which can move, such as the animal kingdom. And the medaber, the human being who can speak, and because he can speak, he's able to share thoughts, which means he has a brain to think and obviously a brain to make choices, and that's what separates man from animal. V'kulam ne'ema l'Moshe Rabbeinu briyasam v'kochosam u'mohusam ma'aseyim v'afisas hanedfosam mehem v'akol nichte b'torah b'ferish oberemes. Everything was taught to Moshe Rabbeinu about the inanimate objects, the plants, the trees, the animals, human beings. All of it was taught to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he had an understanding of what it takes for these things to exist, what would cause the destruction of each of these things. He understood what plant needs a particular amount of water, more sunshine, less sunshine, what the plant needs in order to grow well. He understood each animal, what each animal needs to live well, what would cause the death of an animal. He understood all these things. He understood health of man, of a human being, what it takes for a human being to be well and healthy, and chas v'shalom, what a human being can do or what can happen to him that would cause him to be ill. Moshe Rabbeinu understood all these things. He was a veterinarian. He was a doctor. He was all these things. He didn't go to any school to gain this education. He got this education directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu when HaKadosh Baruch Hu was teaching him the Torah. And the Ramban tells us, "V'hakol nichtav b'Torah," all of this chachma, all of this wisdom, human illness, human healing, animals. What do I do with my herd of sheep? There's a problem. How do I make the herd well? How do I deal with my tree that's not giving off good pomegranates? Moshe Rabbeinu would know the answer to all these questions, because the Rebbe Shalom taught him Beraishis. He taught him how the world was created. And in there, he taught him each creation, what it needs in order to exist, and Chas v'Shalom, what would happen, what happens that would cause its ceasing to exist. And not only did the Rebbe Shalom teach us to Moshe Rabbeinu, but it's all written in the Torah. But Perush or Beremes, sometimes it's Mefurash, anyone can see it in the Torah, and sometimes it's there Beremes, through a Remes. You have to know how to learn the Psukim. You have to know, we're going to see soon in the Ramban, you have to know Rashi Tevis, Sofei Tevis, Gematrias. There are so many things that come out of these letters that Moshe Rabbeinu was taught, all the secrets that underlie the combination of the letters, the combination of words, the gematrias of letters, the gematrias of words. Why is a letter formed in a certain way? He understood Lashon Kodesh in a way where it became completely descriptive. The Maharal talks about this. Lashon Kodesh is a descriptive language. English is not, there is no language that's really descriptive, meaning that in English, people can wake up one morning, Merriam-Webster can wake up one morning and say, we've just decided that the shirt that a man wears, that we've been calling a shirt for the longest time, is now going to be called the telephone. And you need to put on a blue telephone to match your blue suit. And the thing that you answer that's on your desk is now going to be shirt. The shirt is ringing. Please pick up the shirt. What's the shirt bill? So they can wake up one morning. Shirt is not inherently describing that which a person wears, and a telephone is not inherently describing what a telephone is. And you can switch the words, and it wouldn't really make an iota of a difference except confuse some people for a while, but they'd get used to the different words. Lashon Kodesh, we learn in Rashi, in Pashas Beraishis, is the Lashon Shebo Nivra Ha'olam. It's the language by which Hashem created the world. Rashi in Pashas Beraishis. It doesn't mean that God spoke. God doesn't need to speak. Whatever, when it says Vayomer Elokim Or, and God said, let there be Or, it doesn't mean he actually speaks with lips or speaks with words. Whatever it means, the word Or, as an example, is descriptive. Meaning, if we really understood Aleph, Vav, Reish, we would understand why, when you put together an Aleph, Vav, and a Reish in that order, or we would understand that saying that word by a person who has tremendous ruchnius powers, he would actually create light. Because the way the Aleph is formed, an Aleph is a Vav with a Yud above and a Yud below. And that's the gematria of 26. An Aleph is 26. An Aleph has the Vav in the center, Yud on top, Yud on the bottom, 10 and 10 plus 6, 26. And every letter is formed in a way that if we really understood the letter Aleph, Vav, Reish, we'd understand everything about light. Whatever the creation of light is, and whatever the rules of light are, they're all included in Or. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, all the rules of light became planted in the universe because of Aleph, Vav, Reish. I mentioned several times one of my sisters was here many years ago in Eretz Yisrael, and she was going through Machne Yehuda, and she came back to my apartment and she brought me a gift, and the gift was a t-shirt. It says, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, and underneath that it says E equals mc squared, Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared. Who created, if assuming that Einstein is right, that E equals mc squared, he didn't create E equals mc squared. He found it in a pre-existing Bria that God created. And if the equation is correct, that's because Hashem made E to be equal to mc squared. When did that happen? When HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, or whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, the letters themselves, if we understood Aleph and every component part of Aleph, and Vav and every component part of Vav, and Reish and every component part of Reish, and then we understood each of these component parts and put them all together into Aleph, Vav, Reish, and put them all together, we would understand light and all the rules that go with light. Moshe Rabbeinu was taught all these things. Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or. We read it and we say, God said, let there be light, and there was light, and then we move on. Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or to Moshe Rabbeinu meant, sure, Aleph Vav Reish, sure, it's going to give off light. So all of this is written in the Torah. It either is explicit, mufurash, or it's a remez. It's there by hint, and a person that understands the remez, the Ramban will tell us later, these things are based upon a Masorah. We don't wake up one morning and say, boom, I think I understand these things. These are things that are based upon a transmission from Moshe to Yoshua to the Shoftim, etc., and the Nevi'im, Tanoim, Amoraim, Rishonim, Achronim, etc., those who are the true, quote, the true, Mekubalim, most of which we don't know. There used to be a famous saying in Yiddish, I don't think people really say it that much anymore, der was ken sagt nicht and der was sagt ken nicht. A person that's always talking about Kabbalah doesn't know what he's talking about, and a person that refuses to talk about Kabbalah probably knows it. So we have a lot today. We got a lot, the Mekubalim. Yeah. Okay, so these things, the Ramban's going to tell us at the end of his Akdama, that whenever he starts talking about Kabbalah in his Pirush ala Torah, skip it. He's going to tell you to skip it, except if you have a Rebbe who has a Kabbalah on Kabbalah. What does the word Kabbalah mean? It's been accepted. I have a Rebbe who taught me. He got it from a Rebbe who taught him. He got it from a Rebbe who taught him. And so the Kabbalah has been taught through Kabbalah, one generation to the next, just as we call Torah Shebenigla. We say there's a Messiah. There's a Messiah on what something means. We get to the hidden secret parts of the Torah, it's even a stronger world, Kabbalah. You either learn from someone who has the direct transmission, the Kabbalah, he accepted it from someone before him, or you skip it. That's the warning we're going to get it from the Ramban at the end of the Ramban. But these things that Moshe Rabbeinu was taught, the way the actual secrets of life, not only life of human beings, of plants, of animals, he understood these things, he knew these things, and if you came to him and asked him for an eitzah, he knew exactly what to tell you to do with your animals, your plants, your own physical and mental health. He tell you whatever you need to know. He got this because the Rebbeinu Shalom taught it to him, and it's all written in the Torah, either explicitly or beremes. Next paragraph. Ukvar Amu Rabbeinu, our Chazal teach us, this is a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah and Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Beis 21b. Chazal tell us in Masechta Rosh Hashanah, Chamishim Sharei Bina Nivru Ba'olam. God created 50 gateways, paths of Bina understanding. There's a difference in Kabbalah between Chachma, Bina, and Das. It's a type of understanding. Usually it's referred to as Maven Dover Mitoch Dover. Chachma is simply information. A person has a lot of information. He's a Chacham. He knows 1 and 1 is 2, etc. All these pieces of information make him a Chacham. A Maven is someone who can then use the Bina. He's Maven Dover Mitoch Dover. He can understand B from the piece of information you gave him of A. So in other words, the Chacham knows A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and he's a fountain of wealth of knowledge. But that's what he has. The Gemara in Megillah, Namoya referred to a person who just has a wealth of facts as a tzana molisfor. The person is a bookcase. A bookcase has a lot of books, and the books have a wealth of facts and knowledge in it. A person can have a wealth of facts and knowledge. He's a bookcase. That's not to denigrate the person. That's just a level of chachma. It's called chachma. On top of that, there's bina. Bina means a person takes his chachma and starts breaking it down. What can I learn from A in its component parts? What does A break down to B? That's bina, and then of course there's das. So Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe created these 50 pathways to something called bina. There are 50 levels of bina. L'chulam nimtzu l'Moshe. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, the Ramban quotes here, all the 50 were given to Moshe, chutz me'echad, except for one. The path to Bina 50 was not revealed to Moshe by Hashem. Hashem revealed to Moshe 49 pathways of Bina, but he didn't get 50. Shenemar, the Pasuk says in Tehillim, V'atachasreyu ma'at me Elokim. You reduce Moshe Rabbeinu a little me Elokim from understanding God himself. The understanding being that the 50th pathway of Bina, in there lies the actual chachma of understanding the Ribono Shel Olam, which is something that nobody ever got, nobody ever will get, as we learn in Das Tavunos, because it's way beyond the mental capacity of a human being in this world, the next world. It's way beyond the mental capacity of a human being to actually understand the essence of the Ribono Shel Olam. So Moshe Rabbeinu was given 49 of the 50 Sharei Bina based on the pasuk Vatchasreyu ma'at me Elokim. You reduced him slightly from fully understanding God. But Amru, we are told by Chazal, Ki babrias ha'olam chamishim she'orim shel bina, and the Ramban's now explaining the Gemara, Ki ilu noma sheyir babrias hamachzev shar bina echad bekocho v'toldoso, ubrias semach hadom shar bina echad, ubrias ilona shar echad, ubrias hachaya shar echad, ubrias ha'ofer shar echad, v'chein brias hashmotzim, ubrias hadogim, v'yalazel ubrias bali nefesh hamidaberes, sheyizbonin sod hanefesh, v'yeda mahusa v'kocha behechala. These words of the Ramban, kocha behechala, are words of Kabbalah. That Moshe Rabbeinu understood the human being inside his heichal, which inside his dwelling place, which basically means he understood that which we're basically touching the surface of in the Das Tavunos. He understood the neshama inside the guf. Kocha behechala. The guf is like the dwelling place, the heichal of the neshama, and he understood that complex interaction for which we're just barely scratching the surface in Das Tavunos. Yagia l'mashenem. So what the Ramban is saying here is Moshe Rabbeinu had 49 of the 50 Sharei Bina. Each one of the Sharei Bina is dedicated to something. There's a Sharei Bina, a gateway of understanding. Behind this gateway, behind this door, is the understanding of rocks, diamonds, pearls. What does it take to find them? What is it? What are they? How do you cut them? Can they be broken? What can you use it for? He understood all this. He understood in another Sha'ar Bina gateway, we'll call it number 2. It could be number 3, it could be number 10. I'm just throwing out numbers. Gateway number 2. Grass. What does it take for grass to grow? What happens if grass gets sick? How can you make it well and grow again? And there are all kinds of different grasses. There's green grass, there's Kentucky blue, there's all kinds of grasses. Moshe Rabbeinu understood every single kind of grass, what kind of weather it needs, what the right place in the world it would be for it to grow. Not everything can grow in every climate. What happens when your Kentucky bluegrass is going bad? This is what you do. If you came to Moshe Rabbeinu and tell you exactly what to do. Fish, another pathway of Bina. He understood every type of fish, where saltwater fish, cold water fish, hot water fish, this kind of fish, that kind of fish, the shark, the different sharks, the whales. He would tell you exactly what you need to do with your goldfish. How do you get this? The Rebbeinu Shalom taught it to him, and all of these things are in the Torah, either explicitly or derech remez, a gematria, a rashi tevus, a seifei tevus. This is all chochmas haTorah. A human being. Moshe Rabbeinu understood how the neshama runs inside the guf, how the neshama is the engine of the guf. Chas v'shalom, a person gets sick, Moshe Rabbeinu can tell you exactly what to do. He can tell you exactly what you need to make sure you don't get sick. How did he know this? Because Rebbeinu Shalom taught it to him. And it's all in the Torah. When we learn Parshas Beraishis, and it talks about God created man, so we learn these psukim. God took dust of the ground, he formed a body, he blew into the nostril of this thing laying on the ground a breath of air, and Vayhi Adam Nefesh Chaya, man lived. Man stood up, the eyeballs work, the ears work, the fingers work, heart beating, brain working, everything is working. When we read those kind of psukim, we translate them, we learn some Rashi. But in these kind of psukim about the creation of man, lie the Rashi Tevis, the Sofei Tevis, the Gematrias, how the words were formed, how each letter was formed. When you put them together, what does it mean? And when you understand all these things that are hidden in the psukim about how man was created, you understand the things that man needs to do to be healthy, what chas v'shalom a person would do or would happen to him that would make him not well. What do you do to heal the person? All these things are in there, in the letters, in the words, in the psukim. All this was taught to Moshe Rabbeinu. The Ramban now says, the Ramban just explained the Gemara about that the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was given 49 out of 50 Shari Bina. Yagia lama shenema. Eventually, a person that understands these 49 Shari Bina, one of which is the Shari Bina, the path, the door to understand a human being, how his neshama functions in his guf, and if you fully understand this idea of what the guf is, what the neshama is, what the neshama in the guf is, the things that we're learning again, touching barely in the Das Tavunos, then you get and reach the point that Chazal talk about, Gonav Adam Yodea Umakir Boy, Noyef Adam Yodea Umakir Boy, Nechshad Alanida Yodea Umakir Boy. When a person gets this chokhmah of the neshama in the guf, and what is the life of a human being? What does it take for him to live? His health, he knows everything about the human being. That knowledge includes this great person, like a Moshe Rabbeinu. He'd be able to look at a person, and he would know just by looking at the person that this person stole something from someone else. Now let's go back to a piece of Das Tavunos as a parenthetical note. Remember, we learned this week or at the end of last week, guf is this, hastaras panim, neshama is this, ha'aras panim, and then the neshama goes in the guf, becomes the engine for the guf, and makes the guf operate so that the guf can come to its ultimate tachlis, which is to elevate it. By the same token, the source material of guf, hastaras panim, the source material of neshama ha'aras panim. The aras panim goes into the guf. The ha'aras panim goes into the astaras panim, like a neshama goes into the guf. And the ha'aras panim, God's light, is shining in what we think is hastaras panim, and it's shining in there, except there's a thick covering. We call the Kabbalah calls it the klipa, the shell. There's a shell that's covering the light that's in there. When the shell gets broken, the light will come out. But it is the light inside the Hastaras Panim that is actually driving the Hastaras Panim. And for what we see as Hastaras Panim are really events that are bringing about the tikkun and the shleimus of the world. The Ramchal quoted, we saw this many times, the pasuk of the Haftarah, Oidcha Hashem ki anafta bi yoshev apcha usanachameni, the Haftarah for the 8th day of Pesach in Chutz La'aretz, Yeshaya. Oidcha Hashem ki anafta bi, the day is going to come where I'm going to say, thank you Hashem for all those times I thought you were angry with me. I thought I was in a state of Hastaras Panim. The day is going to come where that shell is going to break open and the Hastaras Panim will be gone. And I'm going to see that at all times there is a Ha'aras Panim inside that Hastaras Panim. So the Ramchal told us what is the ramification of having Hastaras Panim in Ha'aras Panim, the neshama inside the guf. And he told us a chiddush that you can see this on a human being, how this functions. The neshama is inside the guf. You can look at a person's face and you can see, is the person happy? Is he sad? Is he disappointed? Is he upset? You can see these things on the person's face. Why do you see these things on a person's physical face? Because the neshama inside is feeling a certain way, and that neshama is creating this visual sight on the person's face. A body by itself, the Ramchal told us, cannot produce anything. A dead body, you can't look at the body's face and say he looks happy, he looks sad, doesn't look like anything. In fact, the Ramchal tells us the skin tone changes. Why? Because there's no neshama to give the body skin tone. But only a body can have skin tone. A neshama can't have skin tone. And a neshama can't show it's happy or sad. But neshama in the guf has a ziv panim. It has a certain shine that the neshama gives to the face, and that tells the whole world what's going on inside you. The neshama is feeding information to the flesh of the face, and everyone can see what's going on inside you, unless you can hide it well. You're a very good actor or actress. These things come out on the face. And the Ramchal explained to us what the significance of ziv hapanim is. He explained to us about neviim. But the point here is that when a person reaches, the Ramban says, this level that a person understands, his words are v'kocha behechola, he understands what the neshama is doing inside the guf. He understands how those two operate together. A person with such a chachma can look at a person and say he stole something. He can look at a person and he can say he had an illicit relationship with a woman. All these things become part of the person's face. And Moshe Rabbeinu knew this chachma of how to see a human being, because everything is there. Everything's written on the face. And there's such a thing in Kabbalah called Chachmas HaPirza, understanding the person through looking at his facial features. Moshe Rabbeinu had this Chachma. And this Chachma, again, is written in the Torah explicitly or b'derech remes. Gedola Mikulam, even a higher level of Shari Bina, is in the Shari Bina of understanding human being, an even higher level. Gedola Mikulam, Shemake b'chol balik shofim, mishom yala legalgalim l'shamayim u'letzaveim ki b'chol echameim shar chochma echad tzloi kachachmosei shel chaveiroi. A person can reach the understanding of how kishuf is done, how the planets work, so to speak, astronomy, the mazolos in the heaven. Persons born under certain mazolos, which you won't go into, there's a whole Rambam on it. But that's another chachma. How is a person's life affected by when he's born? Do the stars affect it? Do they not affect it? Do the planets affect it? He understands how the planets interact with each other. This is another Shari Bina that Moshe knew from the Torah. U'misparim u'makubalahem aleim ashom shem nun. Chazal have a Kabbalah that they got all the way back, from generation to generation, back to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu taught that there were 50 Shari Bina. And he was given all except for one. The Ramban says that maybe it could be this 50th gate that no one's ever entered, no one ever knows about. It's possible that it what the knowledge behind this 50th door is, it is the knowledge of the essence of God, which cannot be given over to any human being. The Ramban in the next paragraph talks about the significance of the number 50. The number 50 has a special significance for us, including the sevens, which he talks about all over the Torah. 7th year is Shemitah. 7 times 7 is 49. 7 Shemitos. The 50th year is Yovel. We count 49 days Sfira. The 50th day is Shavuot. So there's a significance to 7, 49, and 50, which he discusses in different places in the Torah and hints at here. We're going to the next paragraph, which is on the next page. This is what we just mentioned. All that the Ribono Shel Olam taught Moshe Rabbeinu from these 49 gates of Bina, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't keep them to himself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to write all these 49 pathways to Bina in the Torah. Hakol nichta b'Torah b'peirish oy sheramzu b'tevis oy b'gematrius oy b'tzuras ha'oisis haksuvas gilchasam oy hamishtanis b'tzura k'gayin halach. Everything that all this knowledge in the 49 Shari Bina are written in the Torah, either explicitly or b'derech remez, and sometimes the remez comes because of a gematria, the Ramban says. Sometimes it comes because letters are written. Sometimes you look in the Sefer Torah or the Chumash, when they print it properly, you have letters that are smaller than normal letters. You have letters that are bigger than other letters. You have the famous upside down nun in Parshas Ba'alosa, by Yehi ben Sor'on, and between the Parshias, you have an upside down nun in between Psukim. What is that supposed to tell you? The Ribono Shel Olam said, Moshe Rabbeinu, stop. Between these Psukim, I want you to write an upside down nun. He put down an upside down nun. What does that upside down nun mean? The Ribono Shel Olam told Moshe Rabbeinu exactly what it means, exactly what you can do with it. We have Rashi, we have a Gemara that teaches us what that upside down nun represents on our level. But Moshe Rabbeinu had a much deeper understanding of what a nun is, what its component parts are, and even more interesting, what happens when you take the component parts of a nun and you put them upside down. What does that do to the world when you put an upside down nun inside the Torah? Remember, Rabbi Isaac, the famous Medrash, the famous Chazal, Estakel Beraishis Ubora Alma. That's the Lashon of the Zohar. You have the same thing in the Medrash Rabbah at the beginning of Beraishis. The Torah is the blueprint for the world. Whatever is in the world, however the world runs, whatever disease loyaleno is in the world, whatever refuah is needed for a sickness in the world, everything is written in the Torah. You just have to know how to find it. So this is the blueprint of the world. What makes metal hard? What makes something else soft? What makes something melt? What makes something harden? How do the lungs work? E equals MC squared. What does all this mean? How does it work? It's all in the Torah. Now, if this is the blueprint, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, put here between two psukim an upside down nun, that upside down nun is going to have consequences for the world. This is, you roll open a Sefer Torah, and that's like an architect's diagram of the world. What you see are letters, but the letters are actually the diagram, the picture of the world, everything in the world, the history of the world, the present, the future, everything is in there. So if the Rebbeinu Shalom tells Moshe Rabbeinu between two psukim, put an upside down nun, the world of Chachma that's in it, how does that upside down nun affect the world? How does a straight side up nun affect the world? We have places in the Torah where you have little circles in your Chumash. At the bottom it'll say, this is an extra vav, this is a vav, this is a kri, this is a ksiv, here's a vav that you don't pronounce. Here's a word that doesn't have a vav. We make believe a vav is there. There are letters written, there are words written in the Sefer Torah that we pronounce when we read them completely different than the way they're written. We have a kri, we have a ksiv. What is the ramification for the world when there's a word in the Torah that's read differently than the way it's written? So, for example, in Beraishis, Eila told us Hashemayim V'aretz Bihi Boram. There's a pasuk that says this is the history of the world when it was created. And Bihi Baram, Beis Hey, Beis Reish Aleph Mem, Bihi Baram. The Hey there is written very small. What does that do to the world? What has it done to the world? What does it do to the world? And what will it do to the world as it proceeds into the future? Because the blueprint has a small Hey in Bihi Baram. Moshe Rabbeinu understood all these things. K'moshe Amru, as the Gemara tells us in Shabbos, K'she'olam Moshe l'morim, Motzla Kadosh Baruch Hu she'yakosh k'sor la'oisius amaloi, it's a Gemara in Menachos, amaloi elu lama, amaloi osid adam achad lidrosh b'hem keli telin sha'alachas adzumi nain lecha amle alacha Moshe misina. Ki haramozim ha'eloi spornu el mi peh el peh ad Moshe misinai. The Gemara Menachos tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu was sitting in one day on Rabbi Akiva's shiur. Rabbi Akiva was giving a shiur and he was explaining, if you look in the Sefer Torah, you see that letters have crowns. Different letters have different crowns on top of them, the ksarim or the tagim. And Rabbi Akiva was explaining how you derive halachas from this letter that has a certain number of crowns on top of it, like pins coming out of the top, pins sticking out of the top of a letter, and they look like a crown. Some letters have it, some letters don't. The number of pins sticking up from above. Rabbi Akiva is doing a whole drasha of how you can learn halachas out of the crowns, the number of pins coming out of the crown, the letters that have it, the letters that don't have it. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ramban here summarized the Gemara. Moshe Rabbeinu says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam, where is he getting this from? Where does he learn? How does he learning halachas out of the crowns on the letters? And the Ribono Shel Olam tells him, halacha Moshe misina. The way he knows these things is because I taught them to you, and you taught them to Yoshua, and it got passed down generation to generation until it got to Rabbi Akiva. Now, the way the Ramban quotes the Chazal is a little different than the way I just quoted the Gemara Menachos. The Gemara Menachos says that Moshe Rabbeinu was transported to Rabbi Akiva's Beis Medrash, and he said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where is he getting these halachas from the crowns? The Ramban is quoting a Medrash. It says that when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to heaven, and the Ribono Shel Olam wanted to give Moshe the Torah, so Moshe Rabbeinu saw that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was putting crowns on the letters. So Moshe asked Ribono Shel Olam, what do you need crowns on the letters for? So Rebbeinu Shalom said to Moshe Rabbeinu, in the future there'll be a man, Rabbi Akiva, and he's going to learn all kinds of halachas from all of these crowns. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, yeah, how is he going to learn all these halachas from crowns? So Rebbeinu Shalom said to him, he's going to know it because it's a halacha l'Moshe miSinai. I'm going to teach it to you at Har Sinai. You're going to pass it on to Yoshua, and it'll go down the generations. And there'll be a Rabbi Akiva that will darshan this in his yeshiva. So I'm reading the words again. Ki haramazim ha'elu, these things that are in the Torah, b'derech remez, they're hints, gematrias, letters upside down, big letters, small letters, the full understanding of these things. Lo yisbonenu, cannot be understood, elami peh el peh, one mouth to the next, one person to the next, ad Moshe miSinai, until Moshe miSinai. Now, of course, a lot of people come up with nice gematrias. It comes into their heads. Those are wonderful things. But the gematrias, the big letters, the small letters, the depth of the understanding about how those, a person can say, you know, this equals this. What a beautiful gematria. Okay. Now, because this equals this, what does that mean in terms of creation and existence of the world? If your gematria is correct, then it means something for the creation and existence in the past, present, or future, all the above of the world. The depth of that is something that has to come mipeh el peh all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the one that was taught this directly by the Rebbeinu Shalom. So therefore, as we begin to learn Chumash Beraishis, specifically Pashas Beraishis, and we're talking about God creating the world, we need to understand we're talking about, with Rashi, with the Ramban, whatever we learn, we're not even scratching the surface of the Chochmah that lies underneath the letters and the words that are there. Because when Moshe Rabbeinu wrote these letters, he was given by the Rebbeinu Shalom the full depth of a human understanding of what each of these words and each of these letters mean, to the extent that he was able to heal people, he was able to heal animals, he was able to make sure that grass grew well. He understood all these things from upside down letters, right side up letters, formation of letters, combination of words, etc. All this is Chochmas HaTorah, and Moshe Rabbeinu had it. And it's all written in the Torah explicitly or b'derech remez. Next Wednesday, we will finish the Ramban and be ready with the Hakdama and these ideas of what the Torah is and the vast Chochmah in the Torah. We'll have a completely different appreciation of the Torah. Why? Because one of the great things about learning Torah is, besides understanding what you're learning, is the understanding that you don't understand what you're learning, that you're learning Chochmah Elikis. You're learning wisdom that God has shared with mankind, and we can plumb the depths of that understanding only to human level, but we're never going to get to the full depths of the Chochmah. Therefore, we can fully appreciate the tremendous gift that God gave us as we learn Torah. It's God's Chachma, and we can learn it and learn it and learn it, and we realize we haven't even started yet. The Chachma is so it's such a massive, it is so deep that no matter how many times we learn it, there's more there to learn, and we're barely scratching the surface. As the Kotzker Rebbe used to say, Talmud, the way the printers printed Talmud Bavli, there's a whole history to how the Talmud was printed. There were, whether it 1400s, late 1400s, the first printing presses, early 1500s, they printed the Talmud. And if you open any Talmud Bavli, the first page is Beis. Talmud Bavli doesn't start with Aleph. Yerushalmi starts with Aleph. Talmud Bavli starts with Beis. Why does it start with Beis? Page 2. What happened to page 1? So the Kotzker used to say, excuse me for one moment. Hello? Tell me what's up. I'm gonna have to go back to Shiur. What's going on? For how long? Okay, Hashem Yishmor, everything should be good. We'll talk later. Okay, bye-bye. I apologize for that. I was just waiting for an update on a bidud situation. So one of the purposes of learning is to know what we learn and to know that we don't know the depths of what we're learning. And then we get an appreciation. Look at the wonderful Torah that Rebbeinu Shalom gave us. We made a siyum on Simchas Torah v'Zayis HaBrach. We start Beraishis again. And we're going to start Beraishis again. And we start Beraishis so many times. We go over and over and over and over and over it, because no matter how many times you go over it, you haven't even scratched the surface. Now that we understand what is inside Chamisha Chumshei Torah, we think that, and incorrectly so, that when we learn a piece of Gemara, the piece of Gemara has so much in it, Rashi, Tosfos, Rishonim, and all of that is true. And that's Chochmas Hanigla. You can open a Rashba, you can open a Rabbi Akiva Eiger, and you can plumb the depths to the extent you can of Rabbi Akiva Eiger's thought, or the Rashba's thought. When we're reading Chamisha Chumshei Torah, we have this attitude of, read the pasuk, read the Rashi, I got it. Sometimes I don't understand the Rashi, but other than that, I got it. You didn't get it. You're dealing with here 49 Sharei Bina that are implanted in these psukim. The letters, the combination of the letters. The whole world stands on how these letters are combined, the extra letters, the letters that are pronounced, the letters that are not pronounced, the upside down letters. This is the architectural picture of the world, and it affects past, present, and future. So this is going to give us a whole new appreciation. When we learn the Torah, we're going to have a whole new appreciation for every letter and every word, and we're going to be able to start asking questions. Could this pasuk have been written without this letter, without this word? Should have been written a little differently? And all these will be legitimate questions, whether we can answer them or not, but we're going to have a special appreciation. These questions need to be asked, because we're talking about a chachma that was 49 Sharei Bina were implanted in these psukim that we read and think that, okay, let's learn it with some Rashi, we got it, let's move on. It's not that way. We're going to have a whole new appreciation for every letter of the Torah.